There's a country in Europe that is right now paying people to move there. This isn't a rumour, it isn't a cheap marketing gimmick. It's official state policy, backed by real euros, and depending on the region, the payout can reach 30,000 euros, roughly 32,000 US dollars. But that isn't even half the story, because the Italy you see on Instagram, the canals, the perfect pizza, the cream-coloured Vespas, hides a reality far more complicated, contradictory, and fascinating than most people could imagine. A country with more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than any other nation on Earth that is simultaneously emptying out from the inside. A place where some of the longest living people on the planet inhabit villages nobody wants to live in, where paying taxes has become an art form, and where ordering a coffee the wrong way marks you as a tourist in about 2 seconds. Today I'm going to show you 10 real facts about life in Italy, ranked from least to most surprising, and I promise you that by the time we reach number 2, you're going to want to be sitting down, because what the Italian government is currently doing with foreign retirees is not something you'll see coming. And fact number 1 is so absurd and so easy to verify that most Italians would rather not discuss it in public. If today's facts get your attention, hit subscribe right now. Every week we break down the reality of a different country. No filters, no travel brochure fantasies. Just what actually happens once the tourists go home. Fact 10. Coffee has its own rules. Let's start with something anyone can see with their own eyes, walking through any Italian city. People drinking coffee standing at the bar. In 30 seconds, no seat, no screen, no paper cup. In Italy, coffee isn't a beverage. It's a social institution with unwritten rules that locals absorb as children and foreigners learn the hard way. The most famous rule, and the one most often broken by visitors, is simple. Cappuccino is a morning drink. Italians consider ordering one after midday roughly as appropriate as showing up to a business dinner in slippers. And it isn't snobbery. It's cultural and honestly, digestive. There's a deep-rooted belief in Italy that hot milk after a meal sits heavy in the stomach and slows digestion. So after 11 in the morning, what people drink is an espresso, black, small cup, standing at the bar. And whatever you do, don't just walk in and order a latte. In Italian, latte means milk. You will be handed a glass of milk and a look of confusion you won't forget for weeks. Something else most visitors don't know. In most Italian bars, you drink first and pay afterward. It's a trust system that has worked for generations, and it tells you a lot about how Italians relate to their local community. The barista in your neighborhood knows your name, knows your order, and can tell you're having a bad day just by looking at your face. For the average Italian, their bar is part of their identity. The price will surprise you too. In much of the south, and in smaller towns, an espresso at the counter costs between 80 cents and €1, call it $1. In Rome or Milan, it climbs to 120 or 150. But at the airport, or at a terrace table facing the Colosseum, that same coffee can run you €4 or more. Same drink, 4 times the price. You're paying for the chair and the view. Tipping, in traditional Italian culture, is not expected. Leave a few coins on the counter, and it's a kind gesture. Leave nothing and nobody thinks twice. And there's a tradition that still survives in Naples that says everything about the character of the South. Caffè sospeso, the suspended coffee. When someone's having a good day, or simply wants to do something decent, they pay for 2 coffees and drink 1. The second stays suspended behind the counter, so that anyone who can't afford one can ask for it without embarrassment. It isn't advertised charity, it's a quiet form of everyday solidarity that has operated in working-class Neapolitan neighborhoods for centuries. Few rituals say that much about a culture in so few words. Fact 9. The day runs on a different clock. Walk through the historic center of an Italian city on a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon and you may see something disorienting. Shops closed, shutters down, silence. It's not a holiday. There's no strike. It's the midday pause, and while it has nearly vanished in northern business hubs like Milan and Turin, in mid-sized cities and across the south it's still as real as the sun. The Italian day is structured in a way that seems inefficient at first and starts to look quietly wise after a few months. Breakfast is light and fast. A cappuccino and a cornetto, standing at the bar, 10 minutes, then work. Lunch, on the other hand, is sacred. It's the main meal of the day, eaten with family or with colleagues. It can run 90 minutes, and it's where the real conversations happen. After lunch comes the pause, sometimes a short rest, sometimes just walking without hurrying anywhere. Then comes the aperitivo, and this is something the rest of the world is only now discovering, even though Italy has been doing it for more than 200 years. Between 6 and 8 in the evening, Italians gather in bars and piazzas over a Negroni, a spritz, or a glass of wine, with olives, small bites and conversation. It isn't happy hour. It isn't a pretext to get drunk. It's a social transition between work and dinner, a collective decompression ritual with its own name. Dinner itself doesn't start before 8:30 in the north and not before 9 in the south. Show up at an Italian restaurant at 7 in the evening and you'll be eating alone. The chef is still setting up the kitchen. The locals arrive at 9. And there's one more tradition you'll notice the moment you walk through any Italian town at dusk, the passeggiata, the evening stroll, that moment when people go out to walk with no particular destination, to see and be seen, to greet neighbours, to stretch out the day. It isn't exercise. It isn't going anywhere. It's pure social presence. In the small towns of the south, the passeggiata still organises the evening exactly as it did 100 years ago. Grandparents drag chairs out onto the sidewalk. Young people circle the main square. Families walk without rushing. It's the Italian version of something most urban cultures have lost, and that nobody has managed to replace with an app. Could you live at that pace? Long lunches, late dinners? Tell me in the comments. Because a lot of people who move to Italy say the first few months drive them crazy, and after 6 months they can't imagine living any other way. Fact 8. Tourism is suffocating. The cities. Walking through the centre of Venice in summer makes you feel two things at once. Absolute awe at the beauty of the place, and total discomfort at the number of people. You're not exaggerating. On peak days, historic Venice takes in as many as 85,000 visitors in a single day. 85,000 people in a space built for a fraction of that, crossing bridges 20 inches wide, competing for the same view, the same gelato, the same photograph. In 2025, Italy received more than 185 million tourists, nearly 3 times its own population. To put that in perspective, if you lined all of those visitors up single file, the line would wrap around the equator more than 4 times. It's the most visited country in Europe and one of the 5 most visited on Earth. The problem is that the tourism is overwhelmingly concentrated in the same handful of places: Rome, Florence, Venice, the Amalfi Coast. What's happening in those cities now has a name: over-tourism, and the consequences are extremely concrete. Residents leave because rent has climbed to impossible levels, driven by investors converting apartments into short-term rentals. The markets and shops that sold food and clothes to actual neighbourhood residents closed down, replaced by souvenir stores and restaurants with menus in 12 languages. Venice, which in the 1970s had more than 120,000 people living in its historic centre, now has fewer than 50,000, and the number keeps falling every year. To slow this down, Venice introduced an entry fee in 2025 for day trippers visiting the historic centre, 5 to 10 euros per person depending on the date. Florence and Rome are discussing similar measures. It's the first time in modern history that a European city has charged people to walk into it. And it sort of works. It shaved visitor numbers on some peak days. It did not solve the underlying problem. Fact 7. 2 countries in one. Here's something the maps don't tell you. Italy isn't really one country. It's 2 countries inside the same borders, split by an invisible line running roughly at the latitude of Rome. And the gap between north and south is so pronounced that European economists compare it to the gap between Germany and Greece. Walk through Milan or Turin and you'll find a modern metro, high-speed rail, major manufacturing, global fashion houses, and a standard of living comparable to Paris or Amsterdam. GDP per capita in Lombardy, Milan's region, sits at around 127% of the European average, meaning the average Lombard lives better than the average French or German citizen. Now move to Calabria, down at the toe of the boot. Same statistic, roughly 56% of the European average, almost exactly half of the north. Youth unemployment in some southern provinces runs near 30%. That isn't an abstract number, it means 1 in 3 people between 15 and 24 has no job and no clear path to one. In 2024, average wages in the north ran about 12% higher than in the south, and that figure understates the real difference, because the north also has better infrastructure, better hospitals, better schools, and more opportunity. Which is why Italy's brain drain isn't only outward. It's also internal, young people from the Mezzogiorno moving to Milan and Turin, leaving behind towns that gradually end up populated entirely by the elderly. The most striking part is that this divide is neither new nor accidental. Italy only unified as a country in 1861, and from the very first day of the unified state, the industrialized north and the agrarian south took different paths. More than 160 years later, the gap hasn't just persisted. On some measures, it's widening. So as if Denmark and Albania shared a border, a flag, a language, and in many cases the same family, split between two worlds. Fact 6. More world heritage than anyone. Walk through Rome and look up in any direction, and you're looking at history. A 2nd century arch on one side, a Baroque church on the other, a Renaissance piazza in between. Italy has more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than any other country on the planet. As of today, 61, a number UNESCO confirmed in July 2025 with the addition of Sardinia's prehistoric tombs, the Domus de Janas. For scale, China is second with 60, Germany has 55, France 54, Italy leads all of them, and the gap isn't explained by the size of the country, which isn't especially large. It's explained by the sheer density of civilization stacked into every square mile of its territory. And it isn't only the famous monuments, the Colosseum, the canals, the Leaning Tower. It's also 1,000-year-old beech forests in the Apennines, Roman roads built more than 2,000 years ago that you can still walk on, vineyard landscapes in Piedmont, so perfectly maintained they look like paintings. Italy is, in the most literal and verifiable sense, the largest open-air museum in the world. And the count keeps growing. The Domus de Janas, added in 2025, are prehistoric tombs carved directly into living rock between the 5th and 3rd millennium BC. Sardinians call them literally the houses of the fairies. They are more than 5,000 years old. To put that in scale, when those tombs already existed, the pyramids of Egypt had not yet been built. That's Italy. A country where you can walk to the grocery store across a Roman mosaic set into the pavement, and where digging the foundation for a new building routinely uncovers ruins that halt construction for months. The history isn't in the museums, it's in the ground under your feet. Fact 5. A demographic crisis with no precedent. Here's where we move into territory most people would rather not look at directly, but which explains almost every economic and social decision Italy is making right now. In 2025, Italy recorded the lowest number of births since the country was unified. Not since the Second World War. Since unification, in 1861. Fewer than 370,000 babies in an entire year, in a nation of roughly 59 million people. The fertility rate has fallen to about 1.13 children per woman. For a population to hold steady, that number needs to be 2.1. Italy is at barely half. The problem isn't new, but it's accelerating. Projections from ISTAT, the National Statistics Institute, show the population falling below 55 million by 2050. By 2080, it could be 45 million, a loss of roughly 14 million people in 50 years. To put that in perspective, it's as if the entire population of Belgium simply vanished from Italy. The average Italian today is 46.4 years old. By 2050, 34% of the population will be over 65, which means fewer and fewer working-age people supporting the pensions and healthcare of an increasingly old population. So why aren't people having children? The reasons are multiple, and most of you will recognize every one of them. Housing costs, job insecurity, low wages for young people, the near total absence of affordable childcare, and underneath all of it, a widespread sense that the future is too uncertain to bring a new life into. This isn't a uniquely Italian problem, but in Italy it's felt with unusual intensity. What do you think? Can cash incentives actually reverse something like this, or is there something deeper that governments aren't seeing? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to read them. Fact 4. Pensions are breaking the state. This is the direct flip side of the last fact, and when you put the two together, the picture gets very clear, very fast. Italy spends roughly 16% of its entire GDP on pensions. That number may not mean much on its own, so here's the context. It's the highest share of any developed country except Greece. Germany spends around 10%. The developed world average is about 8%. Italy roughly doubles it. In absolute terms, in 2024, the Italian state put about 337 billion euros into its pension system. That is more than many countries spend on their entire national budget. And to cover it, the state uses roughly 80% of everything it collects in personal income tax. How did it get here? Decades of policy that allowed early retirement on very generous terms at a time when life expectancy kept climbing. An Italian today lives to about 83, plenty of them retired in their mid-50s. The system absorbed that for years because there were many active workers per retiree. But as the birth rate collapsed, that equation started inverting. The Italian state knows this, which is why it has been steadily tightening retirement requirements. The standard retirement age is now 67, with a minimum contribution history for early exits. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for 2 reasons. And it's the backdrop that explains why the government started thinking seriously about attracting people from outside the country. Fact 3. Empty villages for €1. This is where Italian reality starts to look like a fairy tale with fine print. There are dozens of towns in Italy selling houses for €1, just over $1. It isn't false advertising. It's a desperate measure from municipalities that watch their populations collapse in a matter of decades. The young left for the north to find work. The elderly who stayed behind gradually died. The houses emptied, deteriorated, and nobody wanted to buy them, because in a village of 300 people, there's no work, no school, and no reason to stay. The first town to try this was Ganghi in Sicily in 2008. Since then, dozens of towns across the peninsula have adopted it. Ololai in Sardinia, Mussomeli in Sicily, Cinquefrondi in Calabria, Fabbriche di Vergemoli in Tuscany. Conditions vary, but the logic is always the same. I'll sell you the house for a symbolic price, sometimes €1, sometimes $3, on the condition that you commit to renovating it and living there for a set period. The catch is in the renovation. Many of these houses have gone decades without maintenance. Collapsed roofs, damp walls, no functioning utilities. Renovation can run between €30,000 and €100,000, depending on size and condition. So the house is €1. Turning it into somewhere you can actually live is the real investment. Some regions subsidize that renovation. In Tuscany, a mountain residency program offers between €10,000 and €30,000 to buy or renovate property in mountain towns under 5,000 residents. In the province of Trentino in the north, the figure can reach €100,000 under specific conditions. And the towns are still emptying because people don't just need a house, they need a context in which living there makes sense. What has actually worked in several cases is attracting remote workers, artists, and foreign retirees who want precisely what Southern Italians walked away from: quiet, slowness, nature, face-to-face community. There are American, Canadian, British and German families who bought those €1 houses, invested in the renovation, and now live in Sicilian and Calabrian villages that started coming back to life when they arrived. They open small businesses, they bring in foreign currency income, and they hand the pulse back to squares that had sat empty for years. It isn't a solution to Italy's demographic problem, but it is a symptom of something deeper. There are people in the world willing to trade speed for depth, and in Italy, that trade is still available. Fact 2. Italy will pay you to come. This is the one I promised at the start, and here it is in full. Some Italian regions don't just hand you a house or fund the renovation. They pay you directly, in cash, to move your life there. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. That's real money, transferred month after month, so that you'll build a life in communities that would otherwise keep bleeding people. Calabria runs a similar program called Reddito di Residenza Attiva, aimed specifically at people under 40. Up to €28,000 for anyone who moves to a town of under 2,000 and starts a business. The funds can come as monthly payments of €800 to €1,000 over 2 or 3 years, or as a single lump sum of startup capital. Sardinia, Sicily, Puglia and other southern regions run their own schemes with their own conditions. And all of this stacks on top of something even more powerful, which we'll get to in the final fact. The question I always get is, but is it actually worth it? And the honest answer is, it depends who you are. If you're young, if you have a profession you can practice remotely, if you speak some Italian or you're willing to learn it, and the idea of living in a town of 4,000 people in the Italian countryside excites you rather than terrifies you, then yes, it's worth investigating seriously. If you need a large city, in-person professional networks, or a big English-speaking community around you, probably not. If you want me to make an entire video on how to apply to these programs step by step, say so below. If it hits 100 comments, we'll do it. Fact 1. You pay 7%. And now the one that produces total silence when I explain it in person, because most people simply don't know it exists, and when they find out, they don't believe it. Since 2019, Italy has run a special tax regime for foreign retirees who relocate to the south of the country. It's called a 7% regime, and it works like this. If you have a pension from anywhere in the world, and you move to one of the eligible municipalities in southern Italy, you pay a flat 7% on all of your foreign income. Not 20%, not 35%, 7%. To be clear about how radical that is, Italy's normal income tax system runs up to 43% at the top. 7% isn't a small discount. Over a retirement, it's decades of accumulated income. And it doesn't apply only to your pension. It applies to all income arriving from abroad, rental income from property back home, investment dividends, withdrawals from retirement accounts, all of it taxed at 7% for 10 years. Countries covered by tax treaties with Italy include the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the whole of the European Union. One note for American viewers specifically, the US taxes its citizens on worldwide income no matter where they live. So the picture there involves the treaty and foreign tax credits rather than a clean 7%. Talk to a cross-border accountant before you make any assumptions. For most other passports, the math is a lot simpler. Until recently, eligible municipalities had to have fewer than 20,000 residents. Since April 2026, that ceiling was raised to 30,000, which means towns like Noto in Sicily and Ostuni in Puglia now qualify. Larger, better equipped places with hospitals, schools, transport, and real infrastructure. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. So we've lived in Dubai now for 2 years, and we made the decision to come to Dubai for two reasons. The paperwork requires proper legal and tax advice in Italy, and you want the structure sorted out before you make the move. But the regime exists, it's active, and thousands of European and North American retirees are already using it. What's striking is how few people in the English-speaking world have even heard of it. Most of the detailed information still circulates in Italian through accountants rather than anywhere you'd stumble across it. And the Italian government didn't design this to import wealthy retirees for fun. It designed it because it has an enormous demographic and fiscal problem, the one we spent this whole video describing, and it needs people arriving with stable income who don't compete for local jobs, who pay tax even at 7%, who spend in the local economy, who renovate empty houses, and who over time hand life back to places that were losing it. It's a pragmatic answer to an existential problem. And from the outside, if you have hard currency income and a dream of living in Europe, it's a window that isn't usually open. Please. So there you have it. 10 real facts about life in Italy, from the coffee you can't order after noon to the most generous tax regime on the continent for foreign retirees. A country with 61 World Heritage sites that is paying people to come live in it. A place where North and South are almost two separate worlds. Where tourism is crushing the most beautiful cities on earth, where fewer people are born every year and everyone lives longer, where the demographic crisis runs decades deep and the government is trying to solve it with cash. Italy is exactly what it looks like from far away, and at the same time, the complete opposite. If you found this documentary interesting, subscribe to the channel now. Every week we go to a different country and look closely at how life is actually lived there. No postcard filters, no fear of uncomfortable numbers. The next documentary is nearly ready, and the opening fact will surprise you just as much as this one did. Don't miss it.